Well, good afternoon to some, and good morning to others who are joining us in the earlier time zone. By now, some of you may have seen my face and heard my voice maybe one too many times, but for those of you that I have the distinct pleasure of getting to speak to for the first time, my name is Matt Saleh, and I'm the Assistant Dean for Admissions here at the Villanova University Charles Woodger School of Law. But I hope by the end of today that you're able to recognize me as one of your most ardent supporters, your cheerleaders, and your fan. And really on behalf of the remarkable team in admissions of Phil, Nicole, Kaylee, the entire admissions committee, and the Villanova community, I would like to once again congratulate each of you on your admission. And moreover, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to join us today for our third virtual admitted students day. I have these flashbacks to 2 years ago when the world shut down the week before our admitted student day in 2020, and we had to transition from a 6-hour in-person event to a fully virtual one when no one knew what Zoom was, no one knew what a mute button was or a share webcam. So I hope by now, over the past 2 years, we've become a little bit more proficient with Zoom, although the mute button tends to elude some of us from time to time. And while you're not physically here with us today, please know that we have been very fortunate to be in person since fall 2020, and we welcome any of you to the law school for a tour or a class visit. And that being said, I understand that a lot of schools have not yet fully reopened or allow for tours. So I can't imagine how difficult it will be for some of you to make a decision if you haven't already about where you want to attend and call home for the next 3 years. However, after today, I hope you better understand that our commitment to you begins long before your matriculation and will span long after you graduate. And my office remains available via phone, Zoom, email at any time, morning or night, weekday or weekend. And I apologize for those late night emails and early morning emails that you'll get from me. And we understand that you may have questions. So we are here to help provide answers and connect you with many members of our Villanova community. And I understand this process can be exhausting. It certainly could be nerve-wracking. At times it could be cruel. You know, the bags under my eyes and the ever-present indentation that maintains shape on my office chair can attest to how long and difficult this cycle can be on you as well as us. But it's during these times that I really look to students for my source of inspiration, especially as we enter the incredibly busy time of year where the days get longer and the sun seems to really elude us on the way into and out of the law school. But over the past few months, my staff and I have had the opportunity to get to learn about your stories, your accomplishments, your successes, and your battles with adversity. You know, we've learned about the languages you speak, the company you keep, and the values you hold. And through your personal statements and our interviews, you have really motivated and inspired me to want to work harder, to care more, to complain a little bit less, and to just be better. And for that, I'll say I'm eternally grateful to each of you for really shaping me into a better person, a better husband, a better coworker, and hopefully a better dean for admissions. And we really do see unlimited potential in you. And we hope that we can help you realize that potential as future Villanova law students and lawyers. And should you choose to attend, you are joining a community that actively cares about you and you being here. And today we are here to connect with you. You know, while we have been hosting several virtual and in-person events over the course of these past few months, during these next 2 days, you will listen to a lot of panels about clinics and externships, student life, career strategy, and more. So certainly take the time to get to know the professors, the students, and each other. And we encourage you to sincerely ask questions. And you all have difficult decisions that you're about to make about where you want to spend your time in law school. And you likely have several options that you are weighing and factors that are influencing your decision-making process. And as odd as this may sound, we are not here to sell you on Villanova, but really to provide you with a window into who we are and how we will help support you and provide you with opportunities to help you realize your dreams. And at Villanova, you're joining a law school, yes, but also a family that will be here for you, not just during your 3 years, but throughout your career and lifetime. So is Villanova the right fit for you? I personally, no one can answer that question but you. But what I can say is that we're sold on you. We would love to have you here. We wouldn't have called to congratulate you on getting accepted, written personal notes in your admissions letter to the point where I'm getting carpal tunnel, or connected you with members of our community if we did not want you here. And after today, I hope you better understand more about Villanova and our commitment to you academically, personally, and professionally. And two of your biggest supporters are going to be here, and they're right here right now. And they're going to be none other than Dean Ravnel, who's our Associate Dean for Faculty Research and Development, and Dean Centeno, who's our Associate Dean of Academic Affairs. I've personally had the opportunity to work with both of these professors prior to their deanship and now, and I can tell you how committed they are to your success, Villanova's success, and the success of the faculty. Dean Terry Ravnell teaches civil procedure, crim pro, civil rights litigation, and police conduct. She is an expert on qualified immunity, municipal liability, and federal civil rights litigation against police officials. And you can typically catch her on NBC Philadelphia speaking on these issues, or in the hallways professing her love of tomato pie, for which we forgive her, or in Jamaica right now. And Dean Candace Centeno directs our Duane Morris Legal Writing Program and teaches legal analysis and writing 1 and 2, as well as medical malpractice. In addition to her responsibilities at the law school, she also serves as a volunteer attorney at the Support Center for Child Advocates. And outside of her office in the classroom, you can typically catch Dean Centeno zooming into a director's meeting while skiing down a mountain or talking about her son's application to medical school. And while each of them is incredibly accomplished, they are both huge advocates for our students, scholars advancing their fields, and incredible ambassadors of Villanova. And what we plan to do here in this session is to really give all of the admitted students the opportunity to hear from both of these deans and ask them questions. You often get to hear from me. Some may say a little bit too much, even right now. But this is a wonderful chance to hear from the people that are really leading the charge at the law school. And while I provided a very brief intro, I was hoping that maybe each of you could introduce yourselves and speak a little bit more about your roles at Villanova and the work that you do, starting with you, Dean Ravnell.
Thanks so much, Matt. Thanks for all that you do for the law school. You are just such a treasure, and we're never going to let you go. Welcome to all of you admitted students. Congratulations. Regardless of what you decide, and I'm going to speak in the affirmative and say, so when you decide to come here, this will be a really great introduction and a really good opportunity for you to start getting to know some of your community members. But and the very, very slim chance that you mistakenly choose another institution, I just want to congratulate you on your admissions regardless. And I say that all in jest, but seriously, this is a great community that you have the opportunity to join. As Mr. Saleh said, Dean Saleh, I guess, is that the
pronunciation? Call me
Matt.
Matt.
As he said, I'm sorry, I'm a little off. I will tell you guys, I'm not usually found in Jamaica. I actually am in Jamaica right now. And you guys are the first office business meeting I've done in a week. And that's how committed I am to you all, that I left the beach and I'm here right now because I really wanted to talk to you guys today. So I'm sorry if I seem a little bit off. I'm going to get it together in a second. But I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Professor Ravenell. I'm also the Associate Dean for Faculty Research and Development. These two dual roles, I think, really sort of reflect the dual roles of a lot of people in the law school, in the sense that we are both teachers, we're scholars. We would describe ourselves as teacher scholars, which I think is important because it means we always teach first. So as Matt mentioned, I teach civil procedure. That means that there is probably for next year, a 50% chance that you'll have me in the first semester because everybody takes civil procedure. So I teach civil procedure, I teach civil rights, which is an upper level elective course. I also teach criminal procedure and police conduct. So there's lots of opportunities that you'll have to interact with me in the classroom. As Matt mentioned, I'm also a scholar, and I write a lot about Section 1983, which is the federal civil remedies for people who have been deprived of their constitutional rights. It's actually a huge part of federal litigation and a really important statute in the sense that it's what provides us with the ability for private enforcement of constitutional violations. And so I spend my time writing about that, and particularly as it concerns police conduct. And Unfortunately, there's been a lot with police conduct in the last few years, which means that I have a plethora of things to write about, but it also means that my expertise has been called on, as Matt said, from anywhere from our local news to MSNBC to NPR across the country. And so I've spoken a lot about my research and my expertise. And I think that one of the really great things about being a student at Villanova specifically is that not only do you learn from your teachers in the classroom, but you also have an opportunity to work with us on our scholarship. The sort of flip side job as an administrator is to facilitate faculty research and development. And one of those things that means is that I really organize a lot of our scholarly programs, our RA, our research assistants sort of system, and a bunch of other things. And so I get to work with the faculty closely on all of their scholarship. I get to help match faculty and students so they can work together on faculty scholarship. And it's just a really great position. I've now been at Villanova since the fall of 2006. I have no intention of leaving. I love it here. I joined because I wanted to join a community. I know everybody very well. And one of the things you'll see when you visit here, and then I'm going to be quiet because but Dean Centeno has a lot to say too, but one of the things you'll see when you visit here is that there's genuine love amongst us. And I don't just mean the faculty or the staff, I mean from everybody, from the top of the building to the bottom of the building, from the bottom of the building to the top. We know one another, we greet one another with genuine enthusiasm and love. And that's the type of community that you're going to join. And you're going to be greeted in the same way and embraced in that same way, encouraged and developed in that same way. So congratulations on this opportunity to join this really amazing community.
I guess I'm up. Hi, everybody.
I'm done. I've got to like take a breather, get a sip of coffee.
So I want to first congratulate all of you for being admitted to Villanova Law, which is no small feat. And having sat in the backseat of a child going through the process of graduate school, it's your parents, family members, spouses, friends are probably like, wow, and also relief. So congratulations. And I hope that you get a good sense of Villanova, even though we're virtual today, that will help you when you walk through the decision to come here, which will hopefully be yes. But anyway, I wear 3 hats. I am the academic dean, and I am actually in my office. So this is a real bookcase that is behind me, unlike the fake bookcase by Professor Dean Ravenell. And in my academic
real bookcase, it's just not, it's virtually presented right now, but it's really my book.
So in my academic dean role, I sit in this office and I basically run all things curricular. So I set the curriculum for the year. I work on classroom schedules. I work with faculty. I work with adjuncts. I hire adjuncts. I help create new courses, which is actually the most fun part of my job. Is every year we're adding additional courses, and I'm usually a part of that process, which is a lot of fun. I also do work and supervise the ASP program, the registrar, our wonderful externship program. So those are kind of the main parts of my deanship job. My other hat that I wear is my director of legal writing hat. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about our legal writing program later, so I won't spend too much time on that now. And then my third hat is my professor hat. And this year I'm actually teaching a new class that Matt did not mention, which is advanced legal writing, which is exciting. And it allows me to take a deeper dive with students into kind of things you wouldn't think about learning about in law school, but I'm doing, typical law stuff like email analysis to partners and client letters, but also talking about how to do really great PowerPoint presentations and how to write an op-ed and how to write a blog, because you will learn that being a lawyer and learning to study the law allows you to have lots of influence in life. You can be an advocate for change in so many different ways. And so I'm trying to use this class to talk to students about different ways to be an advocate for a change other than in the courtroom. And that's what writing a blog is all about, or having a blog, or writing an op-ed. So it's been a really fun class. And I may have some of you in it someday.
Well, thank you both. And now we're going to shift into sort of the AMA or Ask Me Anything portion. And I gave everyone the opportunity to pose questions in advance. But for those who think of questions along the way, feel free to use the Q&A, ask these deans anything that you like, type of them, and we're going to do our best to get to them as we speak, and especially right at the end. But to start off with you, Dean Centeno, obviously all of these candidates may not have had the chance, and I know I can see the attendees, not all of them have had the opportunity to come visit during the era of COVID, but as someone who has really led this charge and had the fortunate pleasure of being the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs during COVID. I was wondering if you can talk to kind of like where things stand as of today with classroom instruction, with like on-campus events, and what we're doing maybe slightly differently now in this new normal that we're all living in.
So I think the reality is we're oddly almost back to normal. With the exception of 1 or 2 classes a semester, this year has been all in person. For all of our other classes. And it's been a transition year in the sense that we wore masks for a long time. And there was some lack of food being provided at events. But I think that in addition to the classroom being back to normal, I think what's back to normal right now is the student events. So students you'll learn that food is a big part of Villanova Law School. And when there's a student event, there is usually food. And I'd say that's the biggest transformation this year. Our academic program has been pretty much in person, but student events now have food at them, which is a lot of fun. And it allows students to break bread together as well as have good conversations together. So I also think I'm hoping we never go back to what happened 2 years ago. But I think the other thing is really important was what I saw as a commitment to the classroom from our faculty. So even last year with COVID raging and a lot of schools shutting down, our faculty, in particular our 1L faculty, came together and said, we need to be in person. And so that was my task as academic dean, was to figure out how to keep all our 1Ls in person last year. And that was very successful, with the exception of a couple of smaller classes. Our 1L classes were in person last year. And that really helped set us up for success this year too. The other thing I would add, though, is what's been I always look at the bright side of things. COVID has allowed us to change legal education in other ways. So now any professor is technologically savvy enough to Zoom in a guest from California, from Geneva, or wherever they want to come from. And that was not possible 2 years ago. So I see that as one of the major benefits of COVID, is it forced all of us who weren't familiar with technology to learn it and now use it in the classroom. And that's a benefit to the classroom. So you'll see a lot more people that are bringing in guest lectures who otherwise could never have come.
Yeah, and to follow up on that point for Dean Ravnel, you as a professor, as a dean, you work directly, obviously, with faculty on research. And then a lot of the professors have, typically office hours. So has that changed at all or adjusted during a time when still classes are pretty much mostly in person? Is there sort of a combination of availability both in person and hybrid or virtually now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the silver linings of COVID, as Dean Centeno and you both mentioned, is that we do have this additional tool in our tool belt now. And so, for example, there are plenty of times when, if I have to be away from campus for some other event, or like the sort of once in a year type thing, like right now, I can still Zoom in. I can still meet with students. If a student has something that comes up, or just a conflict, like they are working in the city at a really great internship and aren't going to be able to make it back to Villanova for a meeting, then we have the option to meet during Zoom. And so it really enhances our ability to connect. And so while I think that for some places, virtual learning has made people feel more distant, because it's a supplement to what we're already doing, it enhances what we can offer. And so in that way, I think it actually brings us closer, because we're not using it in lieu of in-person meetings. We're using it in addition to in-person meetings. And I think it's been really fantastic in that way. And as Dean Centeno has mentioned, it's been a really great opportunity to bring people in who otherwise wouldn't, want to fly over from California for the 1 hour or 30-minute lecture or presentation. And it's also given us an opportunity as faculty members to meet with people all over the country. So I had the opportunity to do a talk about, Section 1983 and police liability in Massachusetts, which is not something I know that I necessarily would have been called to do before. But in the process, I met this like fantastic attorney, Luke Ryan, who has like a centerfold in Rolling Stone magazine he's done in litigation. And he came and spoke to my civil rights class about his work in civil litigation. And all of that happened because of COVID. Not only the fact that we had this chance meeting on a panel, but then the fact that I was like, hey, you want to come talk to my class? And he's like, fantastic, I'll be there. And it's just really, really cool that the world has opened up in those ways, in the same way that it closed down and opened up in different respects. So we've fully taken advantage of that.
Yeah, I was going to mention faculty accessibility and how that's changed during the pandemic. But as you can see in terms of Dean Ravnel, that she's zooming in from Jamaica to be here today. And then I wasn't joking in my opening remarks where Dean Centeno during a director's meeting had a ski helmet on in a car and was leading the charge during a meeting about to go down the slope. So it is fantastic. It is a double-edged sword because when you're in the world of Zoom, you're always on and available, it appears. But much to my happiness, we get these two professors here today. And then kind of on a different note, but staying with you, Ravnel, you obviously not only support students, but also our faculty in your role as Dean for Faculty Research and Development. So what does that mean? What does that role do? And why is faculty research important for law schools and for students determining where to go to school?
So I think that there's a lot to that question, but one of the things that I do is, in some ways, I sort of joke that I like run class for law professors as well, in the sense that we have several meetings a week where we present our scholarship, where we have outside presenters. And the thing that that it's important that we continue to hold these conversations as faculty members is it's really a couple of different reasons. One, that I think when you choose to be a professor, one of the things that you're really choosing to do is be a lifelong student. You're choosing to recognize problems in the world and to help look for solutions for those problems. And so many of us who are professors remain advocates, like we are all lawyers. And just because we moved to the classroom doesn't mean that we left our job as advocates. It's that we've now shifted the way that we advocate for change in the law. But this means that we have to continue to be on top of current events, that we have to continue to learn and think about how the world has changed and how the world should continue to change. And so one of the things I do as Associate Dean for Faculty and Research and Development is facilitate these conversations. So bringing in outside scholars who are doing really interesting scholarship, sending our faculty members out to discuss their really interesting scholarship, and then having internal conversations where somebody sort of talks about a project that they're working on, and then we all get together to sort of talk about suggestions for that project to continue to improve it. And this is all so important to students because everything that we learn, everything that we do, we bring back to the classroom. As I said at the beginning of this talk, we are teacher scholars. And this is something that's really true at Villanova that isn't always true at other institutions. There's some institutions you'll go to where people are really very interested in scholarship and less interested in teaching. But one of the things that we really strive for and that we're very careful when we are vetting potential candidates or when we're vetting candidates is that they are not just interested in scholarship, but that they're going to be engaging as a professor as well. And so when I spoke to you about going and speaking on this panel, I'm thinking about my students, even as I'm speaking on this panel. And when I hear this guy and I'm like, he's fantastic. My students are going to learn so much if they hear from him. And so then I reach out to him and I bring him back to the classroom. And that's actually probably one of the more concrete examples of my scholarship literally coming back to the classroom. But professors are doing that type of thing all the time. And I will say too, when I first met Luke, I actually didn't know he had been in Rolling Stones. I didn't know how cool he was. I hadn't Googled him, which I guess he's used to everybody being like a Google stalker. And he's like, Terry, when most people hear about me. They want to talk about the Rolling Stone article. And I'm like, what, Rolling Stone? So it was actually really, really funny to have somebody like that renowned in the classroom. And I just sort of thought, oh, he's a great speaker, I'll invite him. But we literally bring back what we learn, who we meet, to you all, and not only bring it back to you all in the classroom. Like, one of the other things I do as my job is I'm helping facilitate professors writing research. And you all are a huge part of that. You all will have, what at certain times of the year is that professors start advertising for research assistants. And this is your opportunity to participate in that aspect of the process. And so for me, I typically hire probably 5 or 6 research assistants a year. And I make sure that all of my research assistants have get ownership over certain parts of my articles. And actually we write them together, and they will write a section. They will be assigned a particular issue to research to actually write it up. And then we'll work together on sort of incorporating that into the piece. And so at the end of it all, they really see the fruits of their labor. And I know my research assistants this year had a really great experience, in part because they told me, but also because we were super busy. We published 2 articles, one of which has already come out in the Journal of Criminal Law and Criminology. And the other one should be out any day now. And so they really got to see it from start to beginning. Thanks, Candace. But yeah, there's just so many opportunities here. I could just go on and on and on, but I won't.
Yeah, and one thing that I know that I see it every week in the Gavel Gazette, which is the weekly kind of e-newspaper that goes out to all of the students and academic community here, is the Student Teacher Scholar Program. So I saw a familiar face in you on there. I saw one with Professor Giuliano and others. And what is that Student Teacher Scholar Program?
So it's a new program. We just started it this past semester, and it's really an opportunity to just talk with professors about their scholarship. It's a really fun, usually casual conversation. So I actually had the first one, and I had not looked at the calendar when I planned it. And so it was the Friday before spring break. And I was like, is anybody even going to come at like 1 o'clock on the Friday before spring break? And it was full. And we had the best conversation ever. Like, everybody just really, I told them a little bit about how students had inspired my scholarship. One of the pieces that I published, I guess, in 2021, so last year, came up. A student asked me a question after criminal procedure. And this is what I mean about sort of questions coming up in the law and the way that the classroom and scholarship sort of blend in and out of one another. But a student asked me a question at the end of class, and I started thinking about it as I gave the student the answer. And I was like, that's a little bit more complicated than I thought. And so I thought, oh, I'll write a quick article about this to answer the question. And it turned into a really long article that placed in a top 25 journal that's been now republished in the Attorney Handbook of Civil Rights and Litigation, which if I sort of move my head, you can see. And so it all came out from a student question. And so we started talking about that, and then how that article is leading to my future research. And we just the session was supposed to be an hour. I don't know if it was the federal donuts I brought, but we ended up being there for 2 hours. And finally I was like, I've got to go pick up my kids. They're going to be like sitting on the curb of school, all sad and lonely. So we laughed, but we've since then still been talking about the pieces. And so it's just a really, really great opportunity to engage with your professors. And I think the thing I want to highlight about that on a sort of bigger note is the way that professors are just so open to engaging with students on so many different levels. So it's not just like, oh, I teach you civil procedure and I go home. It's like, I teach you civil procedure, and then I want to talk with you about what I'm doing, and I want to show up at the event that you're having. So, I mean, Dean Centeno is like infamous for showing up at all sorts of student events.
I did the salsa dancing this year.
So it's really, you'll just find so many different ways to interact with your professors. And I think that's just another example of it, that professors like really step up and are excited about having the means and ability to talk to students about their work and what students are interested in.
So from research to writing, I would often tell people when I go to these recruitment events in the fall, I'd get so excited and I'd say, yeah, at Villanova, we have 5 semesters of required legal writing. And they'd be like, okay. And for me, it's just funny because it's one of the biggest complaints about like first year associates and new attorneys. And it's such a huge emphasis that we have here at Villanova. So for Dean Centeno, while it may not always be the most exciting aspect on the onset when people come into law school, but legal writing is quite crucial for any student's success as not just a student, but a future attorney. And I was wondering what Villanova is doing to help prepare our graduates for the legal profession and the work that you do.
Sure. Well, I guess what I'll start with too is to kind of just emphasize that point you just made about how important it is in practice. And my background, actually, I practiced for 13 years before I transitioned into a position teaching legal writing. And I did that because to me, as a practicing attorney, I was like, this is one of the most important things I can teach students on a skills basis. And you constantly hear attorneys saying students that are here as interns, externs, new first-year associates, they have to be able to write independently and to think independently, because it's really not just writing, it's analysis and how you think about the law and put it together. So we emphasize writing by requiring 5 semesters of legal writing. But the thing that's really interesting about that, every law school in the nation has first-year legal writing programs. Ours has a lot of really cool things, like you'll be writing email analysis. It's very hands-on. There's a lot of one-on-one attention. We really pride our program in having a full-time faculty. All of us teaching have been doing it for a number of years. And we really, part of the process, and it goes back to what Professor Ravenell had said earlier, is it's student contact is just a very important part of that. We teach overall concepts in the class, but it's that one-on-one meeting with students that helps them the most. And that's a core part of our first year curriculum. Beyond the first year, we have a required 3rd semester, and you actually get to pick a class. You can do a transactional path, or you can do a appellate litigation path. So there's a little bit of a choice. The other 2 semesters are even better because they're all elective, really. And so you either take a practical writing, one's a practical writing class, and we have over 20 different kinds of practical writing classes. And I think that that's something that my predecessor and I have both focused on, is really expanding those practical writing offerings so that the topics are interesting, because you're also going to learn some law. So I thought, and I have it on my list here, if I can find it, I mentioned a couple of them. One new one, and it really ranges from criminal topics to litigation topics and beyond. So this year I added a cannabis law course, which was very, very popular, that will be back. We're adding an asylum law practical writing course. We have contract drafting. We have a special contract drafting in sports law. We have a bankruptcy practical writing course. We have litigation upper level courses, crime survivors, crimination, environmental lawyering, IP, judicial clerkships, legislative drafting. I'm listing off a whole bunch. My medical malpractice class is going to become practical writing. So the goal is to not make it a requirement, but really kind of an elective with this skills-based aspect to it. And that's something that I've really worked on a lot throughout my career as academic dean, to do that and to have this be an elective. And then we also have seminars as an option for the 5th semester. And we have at least 16 or so different topics each year so that students can find a seminar that's their interest and take a deep dive into a research paper. So I get kind of geekily excited about legal writing, because I think that it's been fun to teach an upper level advanced writing class, because I can take it in a different direction with students that have been taking a lot of writing and are really, really working at making these really fine nuances that will make their writing concise and clear and really better than a lot of 1st, 2nd, and 3rd year associates I saw in practice. And that's really exciting for me.
So I'm gonna follow up with this question for you, Dean Centeno. Now that you're transitioning back to a normal citizen professor, what is a like a proudest achievement that you've had, during your tenure as the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs? You mentioned a lot of things that, you have done and your predecessor has done, but over these past number of years, is there anything that sort of stands out to you that you're proudest of accomplishing during your tenure?
Well, I think that's just getting us through COVID, and really feeling good about how we got through COVID, and having a lot of in-person options for students, and also just maintaining the level of excellence in teaching despite COVID. I'm personally proud of it for what I helped, but I'm really proud of the faculty as a whole, because it wasn't just me, it was everybody that came together, the staff, like everybody worked extra hard to make it work. And I look back, and however hard it was just something that I'm personally proud of over the past several years. And it really tells me that if we can do that, and I was only afraid of a snowstorm when I took this job on, we can really overcome other things that hopefully don't come down the path. But I know that if they do, this school can handle it.
Thanks. And then sort of a similar question for you, Dean Ravnel. I am a person who goes gangbusters on LinkedIn, and I always, about 5 times a day, I search Villanova Law to see if there's any new developments. I've been seeing new professors come on board from other law schools, and I've been seeing a lot of faculty research that has been published, and every single week it seems like there's something else that's being put out there. Can you speak to any kind of faculty, some of the research that our faculty are doing that is sort of groundbreaking, and maybe some of the new professors that are joining the law school next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just really an exciting time to be at Villanova. And we see that in the fact that we are recruiting really amazing professors from other institutions, and they want to come be a part of what's happening now. Anything that you could really want to study in depthly in the law, like there's probably a professor who's writing on that. And our professors are doing really good, interesting work. And when I talk about scholarship, it's not just that they are publishing in like elite journals. I mean, we have people publishing in Vanderbilt and Texas, and like top 50 journals, like regularly, even top 30 journals. I mean, it's been really amazing to see the trajectory. But they're also doing really important things too, like writing amicus briefs for Supreme Court cases. They're writing white papers of recommendations for like sentencing and how we should deal with COVID in prisons, what our infrastructure for the country should look like, energy exchange on an environmental level, interesting ideas with IP research, and sort of basically anything that you could think of, somebody's writing about it. Race in the media, privacy issues. Like, I'm just, one of the most fun things about my job is that I get to facilitate these conversations between professors about what they're working on. And one of the favorite things that we do is we do this thing called our half-baked ideas, where professors sort of come in and talk about what they are thinking about writing about. And I get to hear about all of these things, and people have a really amazing ideas. And there's just so much energy being generated from Villanova. And there's so many leaders in the field. So I know that this is an example of something that's not like traditional scholarship, but that gets done. And it's interesting because the nominations for Judge Jackson are happening right now. But when Judge Coney Barrett was being considered by the Supreme Court, I had the American Constitutional Society reach out to me and ask me to write questions regarding the Fourth Amendment for her nomination, the hearing process. And so like that was something that I did, and I only had a very short time to turn around those questions. So of course I turned to my research assistants and I was like, guess what we get to do this weekend? And so there's all sorts of opportunities because there's leaders in the field. When you write good scholarship, you start getting tapped to do more things. And this is something that has a really positive trickle-down effect on the entire community. It's not just professors that have these opportunities. Professors share these opportunities with students too. So it's really cool in that way. And there's so many people doing so many interesting things in different areas of the law.
We have a question here from a attendee, and they ask, so it's a little bit separate from the conversation of writing and research and faculty, but they're wondering about If either of you can comment on the faculty's transparency with regard to assessments, and do faculty release past exams and other professors that maybe don't release those exams? If anyone can speak to that.
So I'll take assessments if you want to take exams, Terry. So for the legal writing program, we do provide kind of what our expectations are, like a grid of kind of what we want to see in the papers. And I do the same thing in my advanced legal writing class. Before each assignment, I give them kind of a checklist of here are the things that I want to see in what you're preparing for me. And a lot of, and that's, we have a lot of roundtables and discussions about assessment, and best practice is to be transparent in what you expect from the students as far as what's included in the material. And a lot of courses, you'll also find that you have you don't just do it once, you do it more than once. And that way you try it, and sometimes it's not even graded. And then, so you can get an expectation of what's expected. So for example, in legal writing, the first semester, much of what you're writing isn't graded. So you're learning what's expected, and you're making some mistakes because the transition is a pretty big transition in types of writing. So in a lot of courses, you'll have ungraded assessments that will get you used to what is expected too. So that's in the writings or skills-based classes. I don't know if Terry wants to. So I give an exam class too. And so I give sample problems, and because I've only taught it a handful of times, my exam class. And I was going to post my exams, but now it's switching to practical writing. So I'm going back to assessments.
Yeah, so I will add to that. And I think that this is true of like all professors that I know of have passed exams that are posted. I can say that I have a really, I'm very transparent with my students. I return their exams along with the rubric that I use to grade their exams, so they can literally see where they got points, like where they earned the maximum number of points, where they didn't. And then I have a class session where I talk about the exam just in general. And then I also meet with students individually to talk about their exams. The other thing, though, I think that's really important to emphasize is that at a lot of institutions, you will only have a final exam. That's not true here at Villanova. One of the things that we have committed to is that every first year is going to have a midterm exam. And so you're able to get that feedback earlier in the semester to see how it's going, to sort of know if you're on the right track, if there's things that you need to change in your study. The other thing that's really important about Villanova too is that we have a really great mentor system where first year classes have mentors, and these are second or third year students who performed well in the class, who understand that professor and sort of their teaching and philosophy. And it varies a little bit from professor to professor, but for most, you might meet with them weekly. They can answer sort of questions that you have, both substantive questions and then just logistical questions about when should I start outlining? And so we've really done a lot to think about what students need and want to thrive here, because at the end of the day, that is our main goal, is your success. And we take a very holistic approach to that. It's not as if you just walk in the door and it's sort of, that's it. We walk in the door and you're embraced into a community that consists of so many different people who invested in your success and your happiness.
There was a follow-up question with regard to the midterm. They asked if there's a midterm in every doctrinal class or just one.
So it will vary a little bit from year to year, but I can speak to the last couple of years. So what we did, I think last fall, so in the fall semester of 1L year, which is when you're getting used to what is this exam, you're taught tort, civ pro, and crim law. And last year, I believe almost all of the professors had an exam. Some of them did it on an ungraded basis, but it gives you practice and feedback. And that will vary a little bit from year to year, but there's always at least one, because you need to understand what's expected in an exam, and that's very important. But oftentimes it's at least 2 of the fall classes, and sometimes up to 3 of the fall classes will have those midterm exams so that you have multiple opportunities to practice before you walk into that final examination. And Terry can speak more to it because she teaches and actually gives a midterm many years.
Yeah, I'll just say very briefly, and it can vary from year to year, but the past couple of years, what I've done is I've done 2 assessments in addition to the final exam. And then there's also like a sprinkling of problems that aren't necessarily graded, but that, give you an opportunity to practice. And I think a lot of professors have a similar approach to teaching.
Yeah, we had a follow-up, well, not a follow-up question, but a separate question in terms of this person posed it where, Villanova emphasizes its professional development program a lot. What is it and why is it a differentiator?
Sure, I can talk a little bit about that. It's actually, I think it's been 6 years that we've had the professional development program. And it's really a program that changes from year to year because we learn more every year about different things we can do in the program. So the first year, it's a combination of different things. It's part getting you ready. So in the very beginning, it's just getting you ready for studying tips and things like that. So it's easing you into kind of being a law student, I like to say. Part of it's about networking and really building your opportunities to get out into the legal environment. So part of what it does is it encourages you to have your own professional identity, discover your strengths, your weaknesses. It has requirements for networking, which is to me so important in the practice of law, is to get out and meet people. So there's a networking component to it and kind of a professional component. We have actually, as a 1L, they'll have practice interviews for all 1Ls as part of the program, so that when you go to your first interview, you actually will have had an opportunity to practice an interview with a real attorney. And for many people, I know I went straight from undergrad to law school. The first interview I ever had, I'd never had an interview before, except at the clothing store I worked for, right, for a long time, or the babysitters that I babysat for. And I walked into that never having an exam, and I actually didn't do very well in it and blanked out in it. And I think I was just so nervous. My second one went great because I learned a lot from my first one. So there's opportunities that are developed in this course that you may not realize it, but, and if you have had job interviews before and you may say, I don't really need that. It's great because now you're interviewing with a lawyer. And so it's giving you that skill set. Well, how is an interview with a law firm or a governmental agency or a lawyer different from the job that I had in my business setting that I had before? So there's a lot of opportunities in that respect too. And there's a lot of different topics that are covered in the course throughout your 3 years, from wellness topics, diversity topics, and equity and inclusion topics. So it really provides a lot of opportunities for students to dive deep into things that aren't just academically based. And it also provides you an advisor on the faculty that you work with too, for course selection, for career advice and things of that nature too. I could go on because it's a lot. They cover a lot, and that's why it's such a big part of our program.
Yeah. And you get to meet with your faculty advisor during our 3-day orientation. And then speaking of sort of this transition into law school, there's a question in the chat about what should students be doing to prepare for law school. So I guess I'll toss that to you, Dean Ravnel, first. Outside of going to Jamaica, what should students be doing in order to prepare for their 1L year and their first semester?
Yeah, I do think that there's an element of relax a little bit beforehand. But I also think that it's really important to reflect on why you want to come to law school and to be inspired in that sort of bigger picture sort of way. So one of the things that I did before my first year of law school is there were several books that I just read. And so I think that reading some books that have like a law focus, and I don't mean books like How to Take a Law School Exam, I mean those sort of big inspiring books. Like maybe you want to read To Kill a Mockingbird, maybe you want to read The Courage of Their Convictions, or just there's a lot of different books out there about No Mercy is a great one. But I think just books about sort of justice and courage, because one of the things that I will say is that law school's hard, and that's not something that's unique to Villanova. That's just being in law school, period. It takes up a lot of time. It's a full-time job. I think that one of the things that's useful about professional development is it does help you sort of recognize the difference between undergrad and being in a professional school and sort of the different expectations that come with that. But in all of this, I think it's really important to remember why you decided to apply to law school, because there may be days where it's hard. And when you can sort of reflect back and remember that big goal. So I think sort of, storing up those feel-good stories about why you're doing what you're doing can be really useful. And then you can relax, like read the book on the beach.
Yeah,
Any other bits of advice?
I'll echo a couple things. One is law school is designed, the first semester is designed to teach you how to be a law student. So there isn't something that you need to necessarily do before you get here. And I've had students that have been piano majors, business majors, poli-sci. I mean, no one's coming here like in med school with a course load that has prepared you for law school. And that's why it's kind of designed to do that the first semester. We ease you into things. We read cases slower, right? You have time to look up all the words you don't know in the dictionary. You practice a lot of writing before you're graded on it in legal writing. So I think that's a design. So there isn't something that you should be doing or studying before you get here. I think I have two suggestions. One is to write yourself a letter, and it kind of dovetails on what Professor Ravenell is saying. Write yourself a letter about why you're coming to law school. It doesn't have to be long, but what are your goals? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? Tuck it away somewhere, and reflect back on that when you need to. And the second thing I'll say, and this is, if possible, try and get settled before orientation. Get your apartment, get the things you need, fully stock your refrigerator, like get the personal things of life set up so that you're ready to focus. That isn't always possible. But if at all possible, try and, be settled before you start orientation. It just allows you to focus on orientation and also on your first day of classes. So that's my biggest tip.
Yeah, I literally right before this had a conversation with the incoming student from Columbia, and it was really late there, but he was asking me like, when should I move? And I said, if you're not familiar with the area, maybe a week before, you don't want to spend unnecessary rent, but if you can get settled, get to know the area, get to know the classmates, since many of you will be moving in at that time, it's a great opportunity. So you're not stressed out moving, finding furniture, buying things, and then 2 days later you start classes. So regardless of where you end up, I highly recommend trying to move in about a week ahead of time just to kind of get your bearings before you start. And I guess probably we're closing in at the end, but one question that we haven't answered that we kind of laid out ahead of time was, many of you mentioned things already that sort of differentiate Villanova, but what do you believe makes Villanova a little bit different than other law schools? And what should these students know about the school if still deciding for some particular reason where to attend this fall?
That's such a great question. You're going to hear the words Veritas, Unitas, Caritas a lot. And I'm not going to say all three of them, but I am going to focus on Caritas because that really has always been, and even more so during COVID, my motto. I think to myself, what's Caritas here? And I do think that is the environment here. It's a caring environment. People work really hard, but it's a collaborative environment where people are supporting each other in their pursuit of being a good law student and an amazing lawyer. And that's important to me. It's why I like coming to work every day. Is everybody that I work with, staff-wise, faculty-wise, we all care. We care about each other, and we care a lot about the students. And that, I think, sets us apart from a school that may be more competitive. But Caritas is the word that I'll leave you with.
And I would actually agree. I said it at the beginning, and I think you can probably sense it amongst the three of us. Like, people genuinely like one another here. Like, you can see in the sort of the comfort that we have with one another and the way that we joke, but this is not artificial. It's very, very sincere. And I think that it is an example of the Caritas that Dean Centeno was talking about. And that Caritas is really reflected when you come into the doors. And I hope you feel it in this Zoom room, but you'll really feel it when you come to Villanova, and the sense of people know one another. Like the dean takes students out to lunch. This is a really special place to be, where you can have these conversations, where professors have this open door policy, where we have so many just great opportunities for you really to come together and know one another. And part of the reason that this is so important is because law school, while it's 3 years, it's really something that's setting you up for a lifetime. The classmates that you meet are going to be the classmates that you continue to interact with for years to come. And these are really important relationships in your own professional careers. And so it's something that will start, before classes even start, but it's something that you'll carry with you for the rest of your life. And it's really just invaluable to have this sort of core love and respect at the heart of these relationships. And I think that that's what makes it really different. I have been at other institutions, either as a student or as a visitor briefly. And there's something very, very special about Villanova. And it's why I chose to join this community. It's why I intend on remaining here. And it's why I would encourage you to join as well. And the other thing I will say too is that it is a competitive process, but you were selected because of who you are, and because we know that you have a special gift and experiences and potential that we want you to share with the rest of us. And we're really excited about you joining our community, and we look forward to welcoming you.
Yeah, I always say, I try to tell all the students that everyone has a vested interest in seeing you succeed, because your success is our success. My job is infinitely easier if more and more students are happy during their experience, because they'll speak to admitted students, prospective students. If they graduate, end up successful and happy, they'll want to open up pipelines to the places that they work. They'll want to serve as alumni mentors. Maybe they'll hire some students as lawyers in the future. And I typically say a rising tide lifts all boats, right? We all benefit from each other's collective success. And a big part of what we try to do here is not just taking smart people. There's a lot of smart people that apply to law school, that apply to Villanova, that don't get in, but we really care to talk about the Caritas part, about the actual community and the character and the values of our students. So we're probably brokering in on closer to 700 interviews. Last year we did just over 600. It's a lot. Of most schools, I hope for your sake, for the students here, didn't have to interview at a lot of schools. But when you are a school that talks about community a great deal, then I feel like you should do everything within your power to try to preserve and protect that community and make sure it's really special, because one drop of oil can ruin 100 gallons of water. One bad student can ruin a lot of people's experiences. So for us, for Phil, for Nicole, for Kaylee, for myself, we work really hard to make sure that your experience in law school is going to be one that you enjoy for the most part, despite all of the work and hours that you'll put into it, and one that you'll be proud of coming out of school, and you'll be proud to call yourself a Villanova lawyer. So with that being said, we're going to be moving over to the next panel with Dean Alexander, and I guarantee you're going to hear that word Caritas come up more than once. So thanks for stealing his thunder, Dean Centeno, and thank you to both of you for taking the time from your schedules to be here today. I'm going to paste the link to the next Zoom right in the chat right now, so you're welcome to click on it to go over. Otherwise,
can I just say, if anyone wants to reach out with questions, my email's always open, and if you stop by, you're welcome to come up and say hello. So good luck in your decision.
Yeah, I agree. And if you want to reach out, feel free. And as you know, I'm happy to set up a Zoom meeting with you, even if you aren't going to be on campus. If you are going to be on campus, I'd love to meet with you. So I welcome you. Thanks for being here.